Hello and welcome to another episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. I'm Dave G.
Hello, and I'm Kyle.
And tonight we're going to be taking a look at another movie that you can all watch while you're in lockdown like the rest of us are. This is a movie that's come out through Netflix, and I understand this movie was actually going to go into cinemas, but because everybody was in lockdown, they decided that it was a great time to bring it out through Netflix because you've got a captive audience at the moment. So this is the latest movie for Aussie Chris Hemsworth, of course, who most of you would probably know as Thor. In this movie, he plays Tyler Rake, who is kind of a mercenary who has a very, very haunted past, don't they all? Like, whenever we see them in films. But he's called in here by his team, which includes Nick Khan, played by Golshiti Farahani. And he's called in to try and rescue the son of an Indian criminal. That son's name is Ovi, played by Rud Hakesh Jaswal. And Ovi has been kidnapped by a rival of his father's, and his father is in prison, so his father can't go and get this boy himself. So it is up to Tyler and his team to go and get this boy. Now, there's not much I can actually say about this movie because it is probably one of the thinnest plots that I've seen in years and years to come. Basically, all that happens in this movie is Tyler goes after the boy and he shoots a lot of people. It doesn't go much deeper than that, but mate, I gotta say, I know that you're like me. You love these kinds of movies, like movies like John Wick, any of the movies that Liam Neeson's made in the last decade. What did you think of Extraction as a film?
Yeah, I didn't think it was a great movie, as you say, because of how extremely thin the plot and the characters were. But I really did think it was a definite enjoyable action film. Director Sam Hargrave has worked as a stunt coordinator and fight coordinator and stunt performer himself on many huge action films over the last 15 years. Wolf Warrior 2, Atomic Blonde, several MCU films where he's actually Chris Evans' stunt double as Captain America. And I like seeing stunt coordinators like this working as the director themselves on a movie, because it means that even if the movie isn't so great, at least the action is. I can see more films kind of following this trend, more Western films following this trend, thanks to the success of John Wick, the John Wick franchise, where the directors of those films are basically more or less came about through the same process. I was a little let down by the story and the characters. I think more could have been done there, but again, the action was really great, thanks to the action choreography and the work done by Sam Hargrave. Like I said, there's a lot of martial arts films that have been directed by Yuen Wu Ping and other fight choreographers who they put them behind the actual, and they put them in charge of actually directing the movie. And yeah, it really makes the movie like a great action film, and that's what this is. Even if the story's kind of weak.
Yep. Yeah, this to me, this is going to be one of those guilty pleasure movies for me, because despite the really weak kind of plot, it entertained me. Like, it's really funny, because in the last episode we spoke about Vivarium and we were saying it didn't entertain us. I actually watched this movie, I think about a couple of days before, and this movie entertained me. Like, I love stunts in movies. Like, people that know me will know that I just absolutely adore stunts, and I'm one of those people that when I see a stunt in a film, I try to work out how the hell they've done it. And for that reason, I really loved this movie. But it's also a hard movie to recommend, because if someone said to me about why should I see Extraction, I can't say that it's got brilliant acting or it's got a great storyline, because it's basically, as I said before, it's 90 minutes of Chris Hemsworth killing people. But I loved how creative the director Sam Hargrave is, along with Joe Russo's screenplay. Like, there's a great scene early on in this movie where I'm just gonna say it, Tyler Rake goes completely John Wick, like on this bunch of people in a room, and every way that he kills someone in that room is unique, and there's been thought put into it. I can't say it's one of those movies like we've been seeing a lot of B-grade action movies coming out in Hollywood recently, where they'll have more of a plot than this film, but it'll be like a revenge kind of movie, but when the person goes to get revenge, they just walk into the room and open fire and like kill 6 different people, but it's all done with like one burst of machine gun fire. There's thought in this movie, and like a friend of mine actually said online that in a lot of ways there's an art in this film. Like, there's an art to the stunts in this movie, where it makes up for its lack of storyline by giving us these really beautiful kind of stunts. In the same way, I guess, like movies like Black Hawk Down did, where bloody basic storyline, helicopter crashes, guys have to try and get out of enemy territory, but at the same time, there's a beauty to that film, like with the way it looks. And I think that's the same for me with this film, is that I can kind of forgive the fact that it's paper thin with the plot, because Sam Hargrave has made this movie look so good. And that's not saying that I wish that there was other things in this movie, because I've just seen the movie called Escape and Evasion, the new Storm Atwood film, and that had a lot of elements from Extraction in that film, but it had that added element that the lead character was an Australian soldier who is suffering from post-traumatic stress. So yes, you get to see the escape and the rescue, but at the same time you also get to see where that left him, like where he is now, and the guy is a complete mess. And people are asking questions about how many of his team didn't make it out and what happened to them. So I guess that's, for me, is I find this film a really beautiful action film, but I do wish there was more story there.
Yeah, the action scenes really are where it stands out. Like I said, you can see this is where Sam Hargrave is really in his element, being able to film and choreograph action sequences as he wants it, with the lead actor that he has worked with before on the Marvel movies, and I think he was stunt coordinator on Thor Ragnarok. There's one sequence in particular that's like this 11-minute chase scene, which transitions through the jungle into multiple car chases and into fighting up and down buildings with gunfights and fistfights and knife fights, and it's all done in the kind of, to make it look like one take, like what we saw with 1917, and there was a similar sequence in Atomic Blonde, which Sam Hargrave also worked on, so that might be where he kind of learned how to shoot something like this. That for me was really the standout action scene of the entire movie. It was a really enjoyable sequence, and even the way that they try to hide the cuts was done a lot better than I've seen in a lot of other movies. Like, there's some of them that really kind of stand out, but it's still, even in 1917, that there were still cuts in that movie which kind of stood out in the same way. But yeah, that whole sequence is just really exciting, really fun, and really, for me, it was the best part of the movie. But I guess, sadly, I didn't think that the action in the movie really ever quite built back up to that same level again. The fight scene that you were talking about, that was before this, and that was a great sequence as well, where when he's first extracting the kid from the people that are keeping him hostage. That was earlier on as well. I guess, to be honest, after this long, maybe 11-minute quote unquote single take sequence, all the action sequences after that I felt were a little bit samey, like with such similar scenery, and I guess without a story to really give me a reason to think that one shootout or one fight scene after that were really any different from another. Although I did think that there was a scene where he was smacking around a bunch of Indian child soldiers. I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that, like, I guess it's just a pity. Like, there's a lot of movies that kind of, a lot of action films that kind of like they blow their cookies really early, and it's a little, it's hard to really to get back to that same level. Like, you're not. When you've got the big, huge, amazing action scene like an hour into your film, and you've still got another hour, like, what do you do from there? You know, but I mean, this is something that a lot, like Bad Boys 2 did the same thing with this big car chase sequence halfway through the movie, and nothing else really lived up to it. It's something that a lot of movies have, so I'm not going to criticize this film too much for it, but that was something I was a little bit disappointed with the action sequences in the later half of the movie. But yeah, just overall, I was that really is what you would say if you're going to sell this movie to people. That the action and how well shot it is. That really is what you would sell it to. Not so much the story.
Yeah, I think they could have utilized Tyler's team a little bit more too. Like, they could have almost made this movie so that it was kind of in that same realm as Mission Impossible, because you do get to see Nick in a few of the scenes, and she seems to be a really interesting character that actually has feelings for Tyler. But you also get to see other members of their team, like, throughout this, and without giving away too many spoilers, kind of early on, team members do get killed. But I think they could have enhanced this movie by bringing in more about the second team that comes in after, like, the destruction of the first team. And they could have kind of made this a franchise. I know that this movie was a passion project for Joe Russo, because he was a huge fan of the graphic novel. And to be honest, I haven't read the graphic novel, so I don't know where the graphic novel goes. But there's little elements in this movie, and if I'm reading the ending the way I think I should have been reading it, it feels like they kind of want to franchise this movie. I don't know if that'll work now, because of the fact that it came out, like, on Netflix rather than in a cinema. But yeah, and I hope I'm reading that correctly. There's a lot of debate about this film. For people who have already seen it, there's a lot of debate on the ending and whether I'm reading it correctly. About 50% of people say I am, 50% of people say I'm not. So yeah, it kind of feels weird that if they want to franchise this movie, that they wouldn't have kind of brought in more of that second team earlier, so that the audience could have got to know them a little bit more and actually feel for the characters. Because I think that's where this kind of lacks. With Mission Impossible, you feel for Simon Pegg's character, you feel for all of the characters in it. So the directors and the writers have that extra element of, it's not only that we care about Ethan, Tom Cruise's character, that we also care about his team as well. And that kind of lacks here, where about the only character outside of Tyler that you don't want to see die is Nick or Ovi, because they're the only other characters that have been given any characterization in the film. That even in this movie, where there are scenes where they introduce a character and it's like, can Tyler trust this person or can he not trust this person? It's the audience is given the answer way too soon. It almost feels like at times in this movie where it's like, hey, we're going to tease you, but then a second later we're going to solve it, so you don't have to worry about that. Like, it's weird. It's a fast-paced movie which is good for the action, but it's not great when you're trying to raise suspense through characters.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to see Chris Hemsworth as playing an actual Australian character in a major movie like this. Like, it doesn't really add anything to the film at all, but it was nice that he kept. It was made in such a way that he was able to keep his Australian accent and his way of talking, like he's calling Ovi mate and stuff, like just through the movie, like just it was like a nice. It was something nice that they didn't just cover it up. Again, it doesn't mean anything to the movie, but there are scenes showing Tyler in Australia, and they look like they've been filmed in Australia, and they have other Australian actors in that, and that was it was something that specifically like established as part of his character. It wasn't a big thing. It's not really important, but it was just a cool little thing, like to see for once see an Australian not pretending to be anything other than an Australian.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, yeah, there's little else about his character that stands out other than him being the kind of stock standard action hero with a dead kid backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because of that, like at times the movie it seems a little lost between whether it wants to be an all-out balls to the wall action film, and it's great when it does that, but then or if it wants to have a decent story and have characters and like a lot of other stuff going on like that, but it kind of ultimately fails to set any of that stuff up. Like the bad guy in this movie is really, he's just kind of a bad guy. He's shown early on to be like really brutal, like ordering child soldiers to be killed or to mutilate themselves on his orders, and the entire plot revolves around the conflict between him and Ovi's father. But there's really nothing more to it. You know, it like you see that really early on. The movie never really builds up on it. The guy has a city full of corrupt cops who are willing to burn everything down to capture this kid, and there's not really any reason for him to do it or any reasoning behind it other than humiliating this other criminal. Like Ovi's father is also shown to be a brutal and heartless warlord in his own way, threatening the child of his like number one soldier if he doesn't get his child back. But the point is made, he doesn't have the money to pay the ransom. He doesn't even have the money to pay the mercenary team to send them after the child. But yeah, there's just story-wise, as far as like setting up villains and stuff, it's really lacking there. In the same way, and again, like with you mentioned the team, I totally forgotten about the team, but yeah, the same thing. It's like they kind of set up these characters early on, and like I was thinking, okay, well they're going to be like go throughout the entire movie, and yeah, they don't.
Yep.
And it doesn't really help. Like with the go to Mission Impossible, yeah, the whole thing with the team was that's something that they really got into in the later few movies. I think James Marigold. I can't remember the director of the last few Mission Impossible movies, but the team has really been a thing for that.
Yeah.
In the original movie, they really set up that he had this team, and it was all these recognizable actors, Emilio Estevez and stuff, and then they all get wiped out like really early on, and it's done as to shock you, to be like you're surprised that wait, they just killed all these famous actors that were going to be like part of the team.
Yeah.
You know? But like here, it nothing really comes from it because there's not really any weight behind it in the first place. I got more, but I mean, what did you think of the bond between Tyler and Ovi, the kid? Because I got some more to say on it, but like, I don't know, I'm just curious, what did you think of that? Did you think that worked or what?
I think it could have been enhanced more. Like, there's a you get to see why Tyler wants to protect this to protect this kid, even if they might not be paid to do so, because he's has been a father himself, and you you see that, but I liked an element that they kind of brought in but then didn't explore, where Ovi's not sure if he can trust Tyler. In these movies, we're so used to seeing like the hero sweeps in and grabs the kid, and the kid automatically sees them as a hero. Like, if you think of the movies that you've kind of watched over the years, like with people like The Rock and people like that, whenever they protect a child, the child instantly like is like, oh wow, this is a hero. I kind of liked that they had in here where Ovi actually says that, where Tyler says, "Do you trust me?" and Ovi says, "Well, I'm not sure." I kind of liked that, but I would have liked to have seen them perhaps like even enhance that kind of even more, where Ovi is kind of not working against Tyler, but like is always looking for that way to escape himself. Because he's not 100% sure if Tyler is who he says he is. I thought they could have enhanced that a little bit more. I do like the reason that they give about why Tyler wants to protect this child, but I thought they could have just played with that of, I don't know if I can trust you, kind of element a little bit more.
Yeah, like, I think, because there's actually, for what little plot and what little characterization there is in the movie, there is kind of reason there that Ovi wouldn't trust him, or would trust basically the people that Tyler is fighting.
Yeah.
More than he would trust Tyler. But yeah, exactly. They didn't really go too deeply into it. Yeah, for me, like at the start, you see that Tyler has no empathy for Ovi, and like he's willing, like he even threatens the kid. Threatens that he'll kill the kid if he tries to run away, and like he's doing this for money, and that's it. At the start, and like we all know that, of course, by the end they're going to grow to care for each other. But like I thought that it just kind of happened, and I know it had to do with Tyler's backstory, but again, it was so thinly thrown in there that it just seemed to kind of happen. Like, okay, now I'm going to protect this kid, like virtuously. I'm not about the money anymore.
Yeah.
Now, plenty of other movies and TV shows have done this relationship play out. They've had this same kind of relationship play out. The Mandalorian recently did it pretty much with Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
And like, of course, they had more time to have that play out, but like this film had 2 hours.
Yeah.
Well, nearly 2 hours, and like the one thing beyond all the rest of the story and the character faults that the movie had that I think they should have made stick really well was the bond between the 2 leads, because Chris Hemsworth and the actor playing Ovi, they're both really good in their roles. Just the writing's quite weak. So like when Tyler's offered money if he'll turn the kid in, or he'll turn the kid over to the people that are hunting him, there's not really there's very little reason for him to have a change of heart. Like, oh wait, now all of a sudden I'm not about the money,
Yeah.
So like again, the movie, it really is about the action and not so much the story and characters. But again, it's one that the action is done pretty well in it. It's not. I've seen other movies that I think were really, where the action's been handled better, like built up throughout the movie better, and I could ignore the kind of faults in the story a lot more. But yeah, just it really is an action film first, and story really does kind of take a back seat to that.
Yeah. I also love that this is a passion project for Joe Russo as well. Like, Joe Russo for me is kind of in that same realm as Danny Boyle and Jason Blum. When it comes to his filmmaking himself and also his producing, he's one of those people where it seems if he hears about a project or if it's something that he's read and he's passionate about it, he'll make it. He doesn't care what genre it is. And I put people like Danny Boyle in there because if you look at Danny Boyle's career, this is a guy who's done a horror movie, he's done an epic sci-fi, he does drama, he's done a Bollywood film, and Jason Blum is the same. Like, this is a guy who will make original horror movies, but then he'll also go back and with these passion projects to remake a film or reboot a franchise that he loved as a kid, and he wants to see it on the screen again, but he'll actually do it in a creative way. He doesn't take the lazy way out. I see Joe Russo in that same boat because, like, for me, Joe Russo first came to my attention with Community, where he was an executive producer, and he actually showed a soft side in that he was willing to let go one of the biggest stars in the show because he thought he wasn't treating other people right on set and stuff like that. Like you get a feeling from Joe Russo that he's passionate about his projects, and like in recent times he's kind of like he's made Extraction, but he made 21 Bridges that we both liked last year as well. And now he's working on things like Magic the Gathering, the TV series, and the Warriors television series, and it's like I think these movies always show when there's passion behind them. Like when Joe Russo was named as the director for like Avengers and Captain America movies, people kind of laughed. They were like, "What, the guy from Community?" But it's like he's obviously one of those people that puts 110% into these projects because he wants to see them work. And the thing about with Extraction is there could have been a lot of people out there that wanted to make this movie because they loved the graphic novel, but this is a movie that could have so easily have just been a straight to DVD B grade, C grade action movie, but instead he's actually gone out and got a director that he thinks can handle the action sequences, and he's gone and got one of the biggest stars on the planet to be in it. Like, it really does show that this movie was a passion project, but it was a movie that was made with heart. And even the fact that they've agreed to let it go on Netflix rather than get a cinema release, which is what was planned for the film, to me says that this was a movie that was more made for action film lovers than what it was made to make a crap load of cash at the end of the day. So I think that kind of shows with this movie too that it was a project that was made for love rather than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm when you are behind when you're one of the directors that's behind the highest grossing movie of all time, with Avengers Endgame, and you've had with Avengers Endgame made the money it made, Infinity War made the money it made, Captain America Civil War made the money that it made. I would hope that would allow you to actually be able to also put yourself into other movies and you'd be allowed to make a movie that you would want beyond that, because that's something I always it's sad seeing when directors kind of get swallowed up by Hollywood, and they direct these huge, massive blockbusters, but then they never really while they're doing those huge blockbusters, they don't have time to do anything else. They can't do anything else.
Yeah.
And then even after their movies are made $1 billion, they still don't seem to be able to get funding for anything something else. There's something. It also has to do with whether Joss Whedon actually wanted to do it or not. But after the success of the first Avengers film, a lot of people looked at that and said, "Oh, great! Now he's going to be able to make another movie or more episodes of Firefly." Yeah, and that's something that never happened, and it probably was just because he wasn't interested himself. Yeah, but that is something, I guess, that with the amount of success that these Marvel Cinematic Universe movies have had, that it does allow filmmakers to go on and do things that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. Even if you're not really fond of the MCU movies or the whole superhero trend, it's at least Russo wouldn't have been able to make a movie like this on the back of Community.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So.
Yeah. And that's something I think that happens a lot in Joss Whedon's career, and I don't know why. But like, for years and years, he wanted to make Faith the spin-off of Buffy. Because he always felt that Eliza Dushku kind of got a little bit let down with the way it ended for her. It never happened. The same, he's been saying for years that he wants to make a decent Buffy movie, because he always felt like the original Buffy movie was ruined by them wanting to do it as a comedy. Has never happened. Time and time again, it's been said that he wants to reboot the Buffy television series. And I've been to conventions now and heard James Masters talk about it. I've heard David Boreanaz talk about it. I've heard Alison Hannigan talk about it. And they've all basically said, yeah, Joss has talked to us about it, but it's never happened. Whereas Joe Russo, for me, he falls in love with something and he makes it happen. Like Magic the Gathering, again, people have said, oh, he's a huge Magic the Gathering player, so he's got a television series coming out of it. And like the same with this, I read a comic, I like it, I'm going to make a movie about it. Bang, it's out, it's in the cinemas. It's on Netflix. But like, that's why I put him in that other list before. Like, he's like Jason Blum, he's a go-getter, but you always feel when you watch his movies that it's been made with heart. There's some directors and producers out there, and I won't name names, but you kind of get the feeling that their movies aren't passion projects anymore, and the movie only got made because their name was attached to it. And some of the movies that have come out in the last few years from that producer or director have been utter crap. Like, they haven't recaptured the magic that they had there early on in their career. So it always kind of makes me feel really warm inside when I hear of these producers and directors that are making stuff that they love, and that you can tell that it's something that they love by the end product and how passionate they've been about it.
Yeah. I mean, like, as I say, they've been able to make, with this movie, Joe's been able to get the right people, and like, it's not a spectacular film. To be honest, I do think that it's a movie that I think will be forgotten quite quickly, and Chris Hemsworth, he's still going to be remembered as Thor, not as Tyler Rake.
Yeah.
But it was still a really fun ride nonetheless. It's still like really enjoyable. I hate to keep saying it, but like an enjoyable popcorn movie.
Yeah.
It still is, even in a time where you've got to make your own popcorn. But it was still an enjoyable movie, and they've made something great here.
So the big question is, what are you going to give this movie out of 5?
I'm going to give this 3.5 out of 5. Like I say, it was let down by the story and the characters, but really the action really did elevate it above the other kind of, because I've been watching a lot of other action movies that are on Netflix, and yeah, none of them really have the level of stunt mastery that this one has. So yeah, I'm going to give this 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said 3.5, because I've been like borderline 3.5, 4, like with this film for the whole time, and I've been thinking, man, if I give this 4 stars, it's going to be like one of the highest ranked movies that I've done so far this year, because we probably should talk about that in another episode, but I've been wondering like what's going to happen this year with like different voting, like with the AVCA Awards and stuff like that, because there's so few films coming out, like, and like I took a look before, and there's only been 6 Australian films come out like this year before the cinemas closed, and it's like, is some filmmaker this year going to end up very lucky with an AVCA award on their thing? Because it's like, it's almost like the consolation prize, because like, oh, not very many movies came out in 2020, so you win Best Picture, because like you kind of were lucky enough to get your movie out there before everything closed. And yeah, like I was thinking that if I give this movie 4 stars, it's going to be one of the highest rated movies that I've given so far this year. And yeah, it's no masterpiece by any chance, but Yeah, I think I'm going to give it 3.5 as well. So that is 3.5 stars from both of us for Extraction. If you are trapped at home and you want something to watch, it's well worth sitting down and having a look at if you're a fan of Chris Hemsworth or if you're a fan of action movies. But it's 3.5 out of 5 from both of us for Extraction. I've been Dave G.
And I've been Kyle.
And we'll be back soon with another episode of The Popcorn Conspiracy.